Donald Trump expected the headlines to be about a major international event. Instead, within hours, one unexpected moment involving his youngest son, Barron Trump, became the story everyone was talking about. Clips spread rapidly across social media. Political commentators jumped in. Supporters defended the remarks. Critics questioned them. And before long, Barron's name was trending across multiple platforms. The surprising part? The viral conversation wasn't really about soccer, the event itself, or even the larger announcement. It centered on a brief comment from Donald Trump that many people interpreted in very different ways. So what exactly happened? Why did such a short moment generate so much attention? And what does it reveal about the challenges of controlling a political message in today's social media environment? Let's break it all down. The moment took place during a public appearance connected to FIFA and the upcoming 2026 World Cup, where the United States is set to play a major hosting role alongside Canada and Mexico. The event was designed to celebrate international soccer and highlight preparations for one of the biggest sporting events in the world. For most politicians, this would have been a relatively straightforward appearance, talk about sports, discuss the economic impact, take a few questions, and move on. But Donald Trump has long been known for speaking off script, adding personal stories, and making unexpected remarks that often become the focus of media coverage. That's exactly what happened here. In the middle of discussing soccer, Trump shifted to a personal anecdote involving Barron. It seemed like a brief, lighthearted story. Yet within minutes, that short exchange was clipped, shared, and debated across the internet. What began as a passing comment quickly became the most talked about moment from the event. Barron Trump has always occupied a unique place within the Trump family. Unlike Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, or Ivanka Trump, he has rarely taken on a public political role. Throughout his father's time in office and during subsequent campaigns, Barron has largely stayed out of the spotlight. Melania Trump has consistently emphasized protecting his privacy, especially while he was growing up. As a result, every public appearance or mention tends to attract outsized attention simply because they are relatively uncommon. That makes Barron different from many other members of the Trump family. People are curious because they don't hear from him often. So when Donald Trump referenced him during a high-profile public event, viewers immediately paid attention, not necessarily because the story itself was controversial, but because Barron is usually kept away from day-to-day political messaging. And once those clips reached social media, the conversation took on a life of its own. Within a very short time, edited clips of the exchange began circulating across platforms. Supporters described the moment as a proud father sharing a personal story. Critics argued that the remarks shifted attention away from the purpose of the event and invited unnecessary scrutiny of someone who has generally remained private. Media outlets and political commentators soon joined the discussion, each offering different interpretations of what the moment meant. And that's often how viral political stories unfold today. A few seconds of video can overshadow an entire speech. The original context becomes secondary. The reactions become the headline. And in this case, Barron Trump unexpectedly became one of the most discussed names online, not because he gave a speech or made a political statement, but because of a brief moment that quickly spread across the internet. Before diving into the online reaction, it's important to separate the facts from the headlines. During the event, Donald Trump shared a story about Barron's interest in soccer and suggested that his son had helped him better understand the sport's popularity among younger audiences. It was presented as a personal anecdote rather than a policy statement or campaign announcement. On its own, the remark was relatively brief, but in today's media environment, a single sentence can quickly become the focus of an entire news cycle. Within minutes, short clips of the exchange began appearing across X, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and Facebook. Many viewers saw only a 15 or 30-second clip rather than the full event. That matters because short clips often travel much faster than full speeches. Some users viewed the moment as a genuine father-son story. Others interpreted it as an attempt to connect with younger voters through Barron's image. And some critics questioned whether Barron, who has generally stayed out of politics, should have been brought into the spotlight at all. Those different interpretations fueled an online debate that grew by the hour. As the clips spread, two very different narratives emerged. Supporters argued there was nothing unusual about a father mentioning his son during a public appearance. They said critics were overreacting to a simple personal story. Critics, meanwhile, argued that the moment distracted from the event itself. Instead of discussing the World Cup or broader issues, the conversation shifted almost entirely to Barron and the online reaction. This is something we've seen repeatedly in modern politics. The original event often becomes secondary. The reaction becomes the real story. News outlets began covering not only what Trump said, but also how social media responded. Political commentators analyzed the clip from different perspectives, while users created memes, reaction videos, and commentary posts that further amplified the discussion. Whether people agreed or disagreed, one thing was clear: the clip had become impossible to ignore. Another reason the story gained traction was Barron's unique public profile. Unlike several members of the Trump family, Barron has largely avoided interviews, campaign appearances, and political commentary. For years, he has maintained a relatively private life, despite the intense public interest surrounding his family. Because of that, any public mention of him naturally attracts attention. Some commentators argued that mentioning Barron in a public setting was entirely normal. Others felt that because he has generally remained outside political debates, the attention was unfairly redirected toward him. Neither side changed the underlying fact. Barron's name was now trending, and the more people debated the issue, the larger the story became. At this point, the conversation was no longer just about Trump's remarks. It had evolved into something much larger. Political influencers weighed in. Journalists published analysis pieces. Content creators posted breakdowns. Supporters and critics continued sharing the clip, each presenting it through a different lens. Ironically, every new reaction helped push the story even further across social media. The event itself slowly faded into the background. The viral moment had become the headline, but the biggest question was still ahead. Did this unexpected attention actually help Trump's message, or did it completely change the narrative he wanted people to focus on? That's where the story takes another interesting turn. In politics, controlling the narrative is almost as important as delivering the message. Campaigns spend countless hours preparing speeches, selecting locations, and deciding which topics they want dominating the headlines. But none of that guarantees the public will focus on those themes. Sometimes, one unexpected clip changes everything. Instead of discussing the broader event, much of the online conversation shifted toward Barron and the reactions surrounding him. For communication strategists, that's a familiar challenge. Once social media decides what the headline is, campaigns often have little control over where the discussion goes next. The speed of today's news cycle is unlike anything we've seen before. Years ago, people watched an entire speech before forming an opinion. Now, millions of viewers may only see a 20-second clip. Algorithms reward emotional reactions. People share videos that surprise them, make them laugh, or spark debate. As more users commented, reposted, and argued about the clip, social media platforms continued recommending it to even larger audiences. The result? A brief exchange became one of the most discussed political moments of the day, not necessarily because it was the most important story, but because it generated engagement. And engagement drives visibility. One of the most interesting aspects of this story is how differently people interpreted the exact same moment. Supporters viewed Trump's remarks as a relatable story about his son and believed the criticism was exaggerated. Critics argued that the conversation demonstrated how quickly personal anecdotes can overshadow larger political messaging. Neither interpretation erased the other. Instead, they existed side by side, creating even more discussion online. That's often how today's political environment works. The debate itself becomes the engine that keeps a story alive. Whether someone agreed with Trump's remarks or disagreed with them, one thing is difficult to dispute. The moment became far bigger than anyone likely expected. Barron Trump, who has spent years largely outside the political spotlight, once again found himself at the center of a nationwide conversation. And that raises a broader question. As campaigns increasingly compete for attention in the age of viral clips, can any political figure truly control the message once it reaches social media? Or does the internet ultimately decide what becomes the real story? One of the biggest questions after any viral political moment is simple. Did it actually change anything? That's much harder to answer. Supporters of Donald Trump generally dismiss the controversy, arguing that critics were making far too much out of an ordinary family story. To them, it showed a father talking proudly about his son, nothing more. Critics saw it differently. They argued that the moment highlighted how quickly Trump's public appearances can shift away from carefully planned messaging and toward unexpected headlines. Neither side completely convinced the other. But from a media perspective, one fact stood out. People weren't talking nearly as much about the event itself, they were talking about Barron Trump. That alone shows just how powerful social media has become. If you've followed American politics over the past several years, this pattern probably feels familiar. A speech begins. An announcement is made. Reporters cover the event. Then one unexpected moment is clipped, shared, debated, and suddenly becomes the headline. Sometimes it's a single sentence, sometimes it's a facial expression, sometimes it's an unscripted comment. Within hours, millions of people who never watched the full event are discussing only that brief clip. That's not unique to Donald Trump. It's happened to politicians from both major parties. The difference is that Trump has often been at the center of these viral moments because his public appearances frequently generate strong reactions, both positive and negative. And in today's digital world, strong reactions usually travel the fastest. Perhaps the most interesting part of this entire story isn't politics, it's Barron himself. For most of his life, he has remained one of the most private members of the Trump family. Unlike other relatives who regularly appear on television or campaign with Donald Trump, Barron has generally stayed out of public political debates. That privacy has created an unusual situation. Because people see so little of him, almost every public mention becomes news. Whether that's fair or unfair is something people continue to debate. But it explains why this brief moment attracted so much attention so quickly. The less often someone appears in public, the more curiosity surrounds them when they do. So, did Donald Trump lose it? That depends on who you ask. Some critics argued that the moment showed he lost control of the day's message because the conversation quickly shifted away from the event itself. Supporters disagreed, saying the reaction was exaggerated and driven more by social media than by what was actually said. What's clear is this. In today's political landscape, the internet often decides which moments matter most. A short clip can become a global conversation. A passing remark can overshadow an entire event. And once millions of people begin sharing, commenting, and reacting, the original context can easily get lost. Whether you viewed this as an overblown controversy or simply another example of how modern media works, it's a reminder that politics today is shaped not only by speeches, but by the clips that live on long after those speeches are over. What do you think? Was this simply a harmless family anecdote that received too much attention? Or do you think it genuinely changed the focus of the event and became a distraction? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. We'd love to hear different perspectives. If you enjoyed this balanced breakdown of the latest political headlines, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next in-depth analysis. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.